Today I'm going to build a simple outdoor garden bench. I'm building this one, and I finished one yesterday for my sister-in-law. And so let's just jump right into it. For the design, I considered the function, the price of materials, simplicity of build, and some other things. I went online and looked at ideas, and I'll show you what I came up with here in a minute. I'm glad you found your way to this channel. My name is James, and this is Homestyle Woodcraft. So after I gather ideas, this is what I like to do. I start sketching things out. I start making a cut list. I start making a purchase list, and just so I can envision it. And this is what I used for the first bench. For the second one, and for this video, I cleaned up my drawings and broke the project into 3 steps. The overall dimensions of this project, of this bench, is it's going to be 60 inches long, 14 3/4 inches wide, and 18 inches tall from the ground to the top of the seat. So the first step in this project is the seat frame. And it's just a simple box of 4 boards. All the boards in this project are 2x4s. So we're going to make it 14 3/4 inch wide, both ends. And then so that the overall length is 60, we're going to cut 2 boards, 57 inches long. And so our cut list for this part is 2 57-inch lengths of 2x4 and 2 14 3/4 inches. Okay, step 2. This is the bench seat. So over the frame, we're going to lay 4 2x4s, and they're going to be 60 inches long. Between the 2x4s will be a 1/4 inch gap. And then these dots right here, they represent a cross brace that will be under the seat, and this is just to add stability to the boards. And it will be 11 3/4 inches. So our cut list for this part are 4 60-inch 2x4s and 1 11 3/4 inch 2x4. And then step 3 are the legs. Each leg will be 2 lengths of 2x4 screwed together. And the reason I'm doing this is I want a real sturdy, beefy legs on this. Now you could buy 4x4s, but when I priced them, they were more expensive than if I used 2 2x4s. So that's why I'm doing this. So there'll be 4 of these kind of blocks of leg together. Now, then across the ends, the end of the legs, I'm just going to put a cross piece, and it will be 14 3/4 inches. And you will note here on the detail, just for a tiny bit of decoration, it's not much, I'm just going to cut off the corners a little bit. So the cut list for this part is going to be 8 lengths of 16.5 inches and 2 lengths of 14 3/4 inches. And that's it. So we're going to build the frame, the seat top, and then the legs, and then it will be done. So here's my master cut list, and I'm going to post this so it's easy to see and for reference, because at least for me, it's easy to get confused and forget where I'm at. And so if I have this up, it just makes it easy for me to remember. So I've listed everything out here. So today what I'm going to do is batch cut all the pieces. I did that quite a bit for the first bench, and it worked out really good. Some projects I won't do that because I feel like the last pieces to be cut need to be a little custom fit, but I think it's going to work out fine here. Let's review some of the tools that we'll be using today for this project. So, of course, clamp to clamp pieces together as I'm working on them. Invaluable. I'm only showing one, but I use consistently 2 throughout this process. I'll have this square to help me square pieces up as I'm working on them. I'll use, of course, the carpenter's pencil to mark, and I use it for a spacer for the seat, which I will show you later. We'll probably use the tape measure, thousands of times today. I use the Stanley Sureform block plane just to get off some of the splintery stuff on the corners, especially because at least on the first one, my boards had lots of splinters. I'm going to be using my electric drill to pre-drill holes for the screws, and then my driver to drive the screws in, and I'm going to be using these screws. They're for exterior uses because this bench is going to be outside. I'm also going to be using my belt sander and my compound miter saw quite extensively. I forgot to mention another tool I'm going to be using, and that is this square, sometimes called a speed square, sometimes called a roofing square. Anyway, super useful, and I didn't want to leave it up. I would normally be using also my palm sander to do the finish sanding, but on the first bench, it literally blew up on me, or at least the sanding pad did. I don't know how well you can see this, but this thing, I was just holding it up for a minute, and it just went, just exploded out on me. So I have a new pad on order, and it might get here tonight, but too late for this project. So there are the tools. Just a quick note about working with dimensional lumber. Dimensional lumber are things like 2x4, 1x4, 2x6, 2x8, like that. So it says it's a 2x4, but in reality, the measurement is 3.5 by 1.5. So you need to make sure and take those measurements into account when you're designing your project. Now, another thing to realize is this wood is not perfectly square, perfectly straight. Sometimes you'll see some warping in the wood. There can be a twist along its length. It could bend this way along its length. It's just not perfect. And so when you're using this kind of wood and you don't do any continued milling work on it with a planer or a jointer, you're going to have to deal with that. And so sometimes it can be difficult to get everything perfectly square. And honestly, it's frustrating. But a lot of times you can make it work, and we will with this project. Just something to keep in mind. And then one last note, when you're sawing a piece of wood like this, so we're going to be sawing it on a compound miter saw. That's the tool I'm going to be using. You could use other kinds of saws, like a circular saw. You could use a jigsaw. You could use a handsaw. But whatever your saw you're using, when you measure this piece out, and you want your cut right here, make sure that you cut to the right of the line if this is the piece that you want. And the reason for that is when you use a saw, the width of the blade will cut out a portion of the wood, and that space that it cuts out is called kerf. And that kerf will change the measurement of your piece of wood. And so you want the kerf to be on the outside of your measurement so that it doesn't impact the length of your wood that you want for your project. So just something to be mindful of. Now that I've showed you the plans, I wanted to show you an actual bench. This is what it's going to look like when it's done. This is the first one I built. So you can see the 4 boards on the top with the 1/4 inch gap between them. Here's the frame on the side. This is the end and the lengths. And then you'll see the legs. Now the legs on the second one are going to be a little different. This design ended up being a little more work than I felt like it needed to be, so I'm going to simplify it for this project. In this case, these 2 boards will be the same length, and then this piece will just be on the screw to the outside. Hey, we got a lot of work to do. Let's get busy. What I'm doing now is measuring out the long pieces, the 60-inch pieces, and the 57-inch pieces. On the inside, because I'm going to have so many pieces, I'm marking the length so I don't forget what I've got. So I'm going to measure and cut the long pieces, and then using the cutoff ends, I will measure and cut smaller pieces. now I've cut all the wood, so we're ready to go into the steps. So step one is assemble the frame. So to assemble the frame, what I'm going to do is I'm going to clamp squares in the corner so I can do my best to get the whole frame good and square. And then I will pre-drill holes. I'm using an 1/8" bit for that, I believe. And then I'll start screwing the frame together. All right, so the frame is done. Now I'm going to use this block plane to clean up some of the rougher edges. On the exposed side, the seat will cover up the top, so I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to check the frame for square, and the way you can do that is measure corner to corner. So this is about 61 3/4. And right at 61 3/4. Yay. That's good news. We're ready for step two, which is to put the seat on the frame. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to screw this one on, this side, and then this side, and then I'll screw down the middle ones. And to measure that 1/4" gap, instead of measuring with a tape measure, I'm going to put these carpenter pencils in because they're about 1/4 inch wide this way, and that just makes it easy. So here we go. So to screw one screw down, and then I'll go and screw one on the other end. That way this gets this one fixed into place, and then I can move that one back and forth a little bit to get it the position I want without losing this position. Now we're going to use the carpenter pencils. So one thing I forgot to do was draw a reference line to line the screws up. It just makes it look nicer. So hopefully it's not too bad. Yeah, they're not in line. That's what I get. All right, so all the boards are now down. I'm going to go ahead and put a second screw in each one, and then we'll almost be done. Then I'll flip it over and add the cross brace. I mentioned before I was going to smooth off one of the edges. So this edge right here, very splintery, and people are going to be sitting here. So I'm going to use this Stanley block plane. Okay, so here's a case where batch cutting everything doesn't always work out. So I had pre-cut this cross brace, and it should fit nice and snug at 11 3/4. However, this is 11 3/4. Hey, how's it going? This is 11 3/4 inches long, but when I put it in, it's too loose. It's about a 16th of an inch too short. So I'm going to have to cut another piece of wood to fit it. So that's what I'll do. Okay, so I cut a second piece of wood, but this isn't it because I cut the second piece too short too. I had which ran me out of my little scrap pieces, and I get another 2x4 out. So I cut this one, it was too long, but that's a better problem to have when you're woodworking, because you can never, it's harder, much harder to add wood than it is to cut it off. So what I did is I made a couple of more very small cuts on the ends. It'll fit just right. So I'm just going to measure to 30 inches, which is halfway on a 60-inch board. And this doesn't have to be ultra precise. Just make a couple marks, and then I'll kind of eyeball center this piece on there. And screw it in. Okay, it's time to build the legs. Step 3. So I really want to give myself the best chance of building a bench with no wobble. So I'm going to try to take a little care in making the legs the same size. So I'm just going to do this. I'm going to take a board and push it up against these two, and I'm just going to clamp them together like that. Now with this particular workbench, I can just drop this like that, and I can go ahead and start screwing things together. I'm going to make sure they're kind of flush at the same time. All right, looks pretty good. And there I've got one leg, and so I'm going to do this 4 more times. Okay, so I've now built the legs. I brought the top in, and it's now upside down, and I put the legs in place, and I clamped them in, ready to be drilled and screwed into place. I put this board up here just to check level, and that one's pretty good. That one is pretty good also. So let's get these legs attached. So between you and me, you may have noticed that I only put 3 screws in each leg. And the reason for that is the clamps were in the way. So I'm going to take the clamps off now that the legs are stable, and I'll finish up. Then the last thing to do is we're going to take this piece, this 14 3/4 inch piece. I'm going to cut the little notches here, and they're going to go right like that. And then our bench will be done. So along the way, I've made a number of mistakes, and most of them I'm not going to tell anybody about. However, this is kind of a funny one. When I was building the legs, I had this really smart idea to put an up arrow to indicate the end I wanted up against the bottom of the seat. Well, as I was drilling them in, I noticed that we got this up arrow here, meaning I put it on backwards, even though I had thought to put the arrow there. So that's how it goes. Now I'm going to kind of dog ear these foot pieces. I measured 2 inches up from the bottom. It's just a random thing, I did it all so for consistency's sake. And then I set this to 30 degrees. Again, no magic, just picked it. So that's what I'm going to cut them at. This bench is a good example of some of the projects we'll do and demonstrate on this channel. If you like these kinds of projects, if you're interested in learning about the tools that I use to do these projects, or want to learn tips, hacks, techniques, skills, whatever you want to call them, then subscribe to the channel, and I think you'll enjoy what you find here. Also, if you click on that bell, that will remind you to watch the videos when I post them. So, hope you subscribe. So it's time to put this little foot on each set of legs, and then we'll be done. So let's do it. Okay, so it's all built. See? Solid. Stand on this. But it needs a good sanding. So I'm going to take my belt sander to it, and it's not going to get my palm sander to give it a better finish because it blew up on me. So anyway, last step and it'll be done. Okay, now I'm going to sand. I've been doing a little dance of the weather here. It started to rain and it stopped and started again and now it stopped. So I'm hoping to get some time here. But we've had our own little miracle. The sanding pad for my palm sander just showed up, so I'm going to be able to do my finished sanding. I'm really happy because I like to deliver a finished product. So anyway, let's get to the sanding before it rains. Alright, so it's all done. You can see the first one I did, it's on the bottom. This is the second one. It's good. I'm happy with how they turned out. And also, if you like this project, check out this next video. I think you're really going to enjoy it. See you next time.